These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
I can't tell if it was my favorite part of last night's postgame or my least favorite part, but did you guys see Anthony Edwards grabbing the printed out copy of the box score sitting next to Jordan McLaughlin after a 9-point loss on TNT to the Suns, and looking, and he just kind of stared at it for like 10 seconds. And he's like, wow, like you guys are all, he's talking about the bench. They played 5 guys off the bench. You guys were all in the positive. We were all in the negative, the starters. We got to fix that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's probably a fair observation after the game last night.
So I got home in time to watch from the Wild game, in time to watch the fourth quarter. And I was listening to it on the way home as well. And here's what I would like, Phil Mackey. Here's what I'd like from you. Because I am seeing and I think this is the best way to put it objectively. I am seeing what I would consider to be various levels of panic. Some people are fully melting down. Some people are like upset, but I don't think they're in full meltdown mode yet. As the if nothing else, also the CEO of Wolves Twitter, I would like Phil Mackey.
It's difficult to be the CEO of both Wolves Twitter and Vikings Twitter. It's just they're very heavy jobs. So
I know,
just
but I mean,
want the people to know how hard
you're
I work.
young. You can shoulder that load. You're very 2022 in your ability to multitask.
I can spin a lot of plates. Yeah,
you can, exactly right. I would like your
Red Panda
state of the Timberwolves right now.
Okay. Yes, I'm happy to do this, and I want to give some backdrop here. And I'll admit I was out and about enjoying a fall night. I only saw the second half last night. But I feel like the second half is kind of all you really need. You saw everything you really needed to see about the Timberwolves this season happened in the second half, where the starters were kind of clunky and not really playing well off of each other. And then the backups come in and give you a jolt of energy and efficiency. And Anthony Edwards plays really well with the smaller lineup. And then they bring the bigger guys back in. And it just, everything, all the themes I feel like kind of played out in the second half last night. So I guess just before I give you my thoughts here on some of the things that are maybe problematic or whatnot, there's 2 important notes for a backdrop here that I think all of us need to take note of, I guess. Number 1 is it's only been 8 games. So as easy as it is to treat every sporting event like a football game and, oh my God, let's sprint in this direction with our thoughts. And then, oh my God, they lost. Let's sprint back in this direction. There's some really good teams in the first 2 weeks that haven't figured it out yet. I mean, the Nuggets have gotten off to just a weird start. The Warriors have lost a couple games that ordinarily they won't later in the year. Now, if I'm betting money, I think the Warriors will be fine come April and will be competing for a championship, so it's not fair to put them in the same sentence as the Timberwolves. But it's really hard to make a full judgment off of 8 games for any team, even teams that have been together and have gelled and made playoff runs, let alone a team that's trying this experiment for the first time and didn't really get much preseason action with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. So that's the big backdrop here, which is I definitely have thoughts and observations and things that look like red flags right now, but we need to give this still 15, 20, 25 games before we can really make full judgments. And the second backdrop point is that the Wolves have been one of the worst long-distance shooting teams in the league. So they're like bottom 7, bottom 8. Last night they shot like 38% from 3 last night, but there's a bunch of guys who are shooting way below their career averages from 3-point range. And at some point, those are going to even out. And sometimes the NBA is about, did you make your threes? Like that loss against the Spurs a few nights ago, definitely some things to nitpick, but they had one of the worst shooting performances in franchise history. If instead of going 3 for 20 or 3, whatever the hell it was, 3 for 23, if they just go like 7 for 23, they probably win the game. So those 2 things are just themes throughout the first 2 weeks. But the biggest problem that I see as the CEO of Timberwolves Twitter, D'Angelo Russell. And I've always been hard on D'Angelo Russell because I just think he's just been this sort of he's not very good. Like he's always been this low percentage volume scorer, not really willing to do the things that a great point guard should do, which is get everyone else going first and then look for your shot. He's supposed to be the glue that brings all this stuff together. Pick and roll glue, get the ball moving glue, and then like make your open shots glue too. He's not doing any of those things in the first 8 games of the year. So much so that last night, Jordan McLaughlin played as many minutes as he did. I think it was D'Lo 23 minutes, and then Jordan McLaughlin played 22 minutes. And the team is a lot better when Jordan McLaughlin is on the court. And there's a reason why D'Lo got benched in the final 5 minutes of a decisive playoff game for Jordan McLaughlin. D'Lo is not that good. He's not one of the 15 best point guards or I guess point men in the NBA. And if you want to do a deeper dive into like, all right, pick and roll was supposed to be, all right, D'Lo is going to be a resurgence. He's going to be master of the pick and roll. He's going to build this chemistry with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns off pick and roll. D'Lo ranks 46th among ball handlers in the NBA, qualified ball handlers, 46th in pick and roll points per possession so far. He's been one of the worst pick and roll point guards in the NBA through the first 8 games. And that's supposed to be the strength of this offense, let alone the fact that he's not exactly a lockdown defender. So I know people think I pick on D'Lo on this show. You're paying him a max contract, only 1 year left, to be the straw that stirs the drink, and he has shipwrecked this thing more than pretty much any player through the first 8 games. Now, do you believe that he can bounce back? Is he going to start knocking down some shots? Yes. Like, can he get hot for a night? Can he get hot for a week? Yes. I don't know that he's the guy that's going to be consistently stirring this drink in the way that it needs to be stirred. Right. And I don't know that Jordan McLaughlin is like a 30 to 35 minutes per night guy, but I know that in the 15 to 20 minutes that he gets when he's healthy, everything is better. And so, like, that's the big thing. I'm curious to see how Chris Finch is going to look at this thing because we're dealing with egos, we're dealing with contracts, we're dealing with sort of, backroom politics in the locker room. I do think Jordan McLaughlin is popular among his teammates, but it's kind of a no turning back move if you were to go all in on that.
Wow.
So that's the biggest, most problematic thing that I see. There's a bunch of things to look at. I'm not just blaming D'Lo for everything, but he is supposed to be at the center of all of this, and he has shipwrecked it so far.
So the interesting thing about that statement is this too, because you're right. To see if you can get the puzzle to fit together, 20 games is probably fair, right? But let's say it doesn't fit, like the D'Lo piece does not fit. You don't have a year to say, okay, you know what? Next year we're going to make a change. It's going to fit. Now you might have to, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't just resign yourself to the fact that he is at this point or potentially a lame duck point guard. But I am saying this: there's not the patience to just like punt and be like, well, it's not working, and so. To your point, Phil, that creates a really potentially after 20 to 25 games interesting conundrum of what you pivot to. Because you don't this whole Gobert trade was not built on, you know what, if it doesn't work this year, maybe it'll work next year. There's some urgency to make it work. So what do you do if you get to a point 25 games in and it's just clear that this one piece especially is not going to work? What do you do at that point? Because I don't think it's an option to just say, it's not going to work, but we're going to continue to force it.
Well, but there's some good news in here. And again, it's going to involve bruising some egos and maybe ruffling some feathers.
Yep.
But old Macadac has spent way too much time looking at Timberwolves lineup combination stats over the past few days. Kyle Teige and I went over these on Flagrant Howls the other day too, just geeking out. And so if you look at the Wolves, and some of this is small sample size. I mean, we're talking about, I'm looking at 3-man lineup combinations. So when Ant and Gobert and Towns are on the court at the same time, and when Naz Reid and Jalen Noel and whatever. So, and these are all, it's 8 games. So these are all fairly small samples. But, these guys have been on the court together for 40 minutes this season, 50 minutes, hour and a half. The Wolves' 3 best 3-man lineup combinations all include Jordan McLaughlin. And this is an even smaller sample size alert. But if you look at 5-man lineup combinations, the only lineup that's played a substantial amount of minutes together as a 5-man unit is the starting unit. And that starting unit, which is obviously the target centers, Jaden McDaniels, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Edwards, is a minus 6 points per 100 possessions. So they are a losing group of 5 when they're on the court so far this season together. 8 games, this is all part of the plan. Let's throw a starting 5 out there, see what happens in the first 10 or 15 games, adjust as needed. There's adjustments that will come, but that starting 5 is a minus 6 points per 100 possessions. Mm-hmm. If you swap out D'Angelo Russell for Jordan McLaughlin, that group of 5 has only played together for 8 minutes, and so I caution you in using this. This is a small sample size. But that group of 5 is a plus 29 points per 100 possessions. I think that's going to level out if you played those 5 all the time.
Right.
But to me, like, the story here is Towns needs shots. Anthony Edwards needs to operate in space, needs shots. Rudy Gobert, needs looks at the rim because he's super efficient. And so you need a point guard that can get this whole thing going and swirling and operating. And oftentimes, D'Lo, the ball just kind of stops with him, or he gets careless with it, or in this case, he's missing the shots that he takes. So the easy solution in the short term is not bench him entirely, but forget about his ego, forget about his contract, forget about that he was the second overall pick like 7 years ago. The more effective, this was just a blind taste test, player A, player B. Who's more effective with his teammates? Jordan McLaughlin is more effective with his teammates. It's a very easy, all right, you're going to get 25 minutes now. I don't know that he needs 35 minutes, but you're going to get 25 minutes, and right. D'Lo's going to get 22 minutes. And this is going to be kind of like last night, and this is going to be a regular thing. And the other piece of good news here, if I'm reading the tea leaves right here, that this is sort of setting up for a D'Lo exit. It's a contract year anyways for him. Expiring contracts, especially his, it's a $31 million expiring contract, are very valuable for teams looking to clear cap space next summer. So the Wolves are already kind of screwed from. It's not like if they lose D'Lo, they don't get $30 million in cap space because they're already so far over the cap. So you could trade that contract, get something of value back in return, maybe a draft pick and another player that fits better. That contract is very tradable in the next 3 months. I'm just saying. So there are outs and options here if D'Lo was determined to just not be working and if he just couldn't get his act together.
I asked Dane more about this when he joined Judd and I a few weeks back when the season was about to start. And outside of Luka, obviously Steph Curry, I know Chris Paul's on a decline, but still a very good point guard. To me, overpaying for point guards in the NBA just seems kind of foolish. And I'm not trying to say the position's irrelevant, because it's not irrelevant. It's a very important position. But paying $31 million for, honestly, an average point guard from a salary cap standpoint to me is really dumb. It doesn't make much of sense to me. If you can find someone like a Pat Bev who can run it, you can find a Jordan McLaughlin who can run it. I think with the way the Timberwolves are set up, and honestly, for most teams in general, overpaying for point guards, unless they're game-changing players like the guys I listed off the top, isn't really necessary to me.
And it's almost we should almost take the word point guard and kind of put it aside in today's NBA and just call it initiator, right. The initiator of the offense. And so D'Lo is the initiator of the offense, but when he's initiating and getting his own shots, he's shooting 39% this year, which is not that much lower than his career average. And even with his three-pointers, people are like, oh, he's a good three-point shooter. Not really. He's a league average three-point shooter, but he takes a lot of threes, so he takes a lot of threes, so he must be a good three-point shooter. But I'm with Declan. Why are you? I get that when you brought him in, you were trying to get from one place to another. But this is kind of what we were talking about last year, which is all right. You got to the playoffs. Now you've graduated from being this bottom feeder team. How do you now go from we snuck into the playoffs as a 46-win team to we're looking to win 50, 55, win a playoff series? Who among that initial group is still along for the ride? And it's usually not the same people. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of looked at him for a while now and said, I don't know that he is a guy that graduates to the next level with this team. And through the first 8 games, he has proven me right. The fact that he can't even stay on the court, dude, it's TNT. You're going up against Chris Paul, and you effectively get benched for a guy that was a G League player a year and a half ago. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and even before Gobert, to go back to the playoff game in which he got benched, I mean, that was a big deal. We talked about it at the time. That was not like a small thing. You had to bench him. He was playing that poorly. I do think, to your point, Phil, that if you were going to make this move, which they might have to, I don't think you can keep him around. Like, I think that it would become a problem. Like, if you were to go to him and say, hey, D'Lo, we love you, but Jordan McLaughlin, we're going to play him more and play you less and blah, blah, blah. I don't know that works. So I do think that you'd have to find a way to facilitate a trade fairly quickly and not have a guy like that being on the roster and disgruntled. But yeah, again, I come back to this. There's not a lot of time here to like play around and be like, well, it's working, it's not working, now it's sort of working. The expectation, I think eternally too, which is the most important thing, the expectation is this is going to work. There's going to be a little bit of time to find out, but once that's passed, we're not going to get to January and be like, oh, it's still not, wait till February. And so I think that's the difference here. We have had a lot of Wolves teams, rightfully so, that have been crappy, but there's also just been this endless window of, well, let's wait and see, let's try this, let's try that. I feel like there's a definite expiration date here where if it's not working, there are actually going to be consequences. And if D'Lo has to pay the price, you know what? I think that's absolutely fine. In my opinion, though, you would have to move him. I would not want that guy in my room if he's disgruntled.
I'll give you one more stat here too, because I like to back some of this stuff up with actual data, not just eye test. But of the 11 Timberwolves players, of the 10, Nate Knight's on this list, but of the 10 players who've played like significant minutes, D'Lo has the lowest win shares per 48, which is just one of like a few different all-encompassing analytics you could look at. If you want to go off player efficiency rating, he's one of the 2 or 3 worst on the team. So everything you look at, he's off to this atrocious start. Now, can he turn it around to some extent? Yes. But has he shown you at any point in his career that he's just going to bounce back and be this consistent force over the course of 80 games? No, he has not shown that. I will also, I think sometimes I give Anthony Edwards a pass because he's 21 years old. And why are you so hard on Towns and D'Lo and not Anthony Edwards? Because one guy just turned 21 years old and is still growing. The other guys are kind of finished products in the NBA. But last night after the game, he mentioned again that he was just kind of tired. That, my energy just wasn't quite there. I was just kind of tired throughout the game. And this is a few days after he made that comment about just being bad on back-to-backs.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're 21 years old. Is there, and I don't mean to be flippant, but like, is there like medically something wrong? You're tired? It's the 8th game of the season. It's TNT. Charles Barkley's about to tee off on your ass if you don't play well here. So why is he talking about being tired? They didn't play 2 nights ago. It's not like a back-to-back. Oh, it's the 4th game on a West Coast road trip.
Right.
So I don't understand what's going on there, I guess. And I don't understand. He has 2 or 3 games. Last night he was okay, but these 3 for 15, 4 for 17 shooting performances too that are still part of his game so far. We've seen the peak of him for 2 or 3 games, and it's excellent.
Yes.
But it's not. This is what people need to understand with D'Lo and Anthony Edwards too. The NBA is not about what does your peak look like when you can bust it out once every 5 games. It's about, can you bring something close to your peak every freaking night for a 7-month season?
Yes.
That's the skill. Kobe Bryant getting up at 2:00 in the morning to hoist 2,000 jumpers, right? It wasn't about, oh my God, Kobe can drop 40. No, Kobe can do that every single night with consistency. Now, that's what Anthony Edwards has to get to at some point. You don't just get to be tired against the Suns in the 8th game of the season. That's weird to me.
I'm also not sure that Ant understands the immediacy here right now, because he started to fall back on, and he's done this before, and I appreciated it, but now I'm beginning to think that it's more just him trying to say what he thinks sounds right. We get a lot of, we'll figure it out. Okay, that's great, dude. But you got to do it at some point in time. And like, I've heard that, I think 3 or 4 times from him this year alone. And yes, that's the right attitude to have if you are going to sincerely do that, right? But like last night, he looks at that sheet, and it was interesting because like his face tells a story, and he was like, "Oh my God, we were terrible," and he clearly didn't realize the magnitude of how terrible they were until he saw the stats. But then we quickly got because I think there was a follow-up question pretty quickly of, "Hey, if that's your reaction, what are you going to do, or how do you feel about it?" And his response was, "We'll figure it out." Okay, that's great, but that can't be your answer a month from now.
Some of this is coaching too, though. Some of this is putting Ant in. Now, the being tired thing is not coaching, but the will figure it out stuff is. I don't think he's taking a shot at Finch, but ultimately it's up to Chris Finch to figure out. Okay, we've tried these lineup combinations for the first 10 games. These things are working. These things aren't working. Now we need to make some adjustments. And in fairness to Anthony Edwards, when you look at the best, again, 3-man lineup combinations, he is part of 2 of them. Him and Jordan McLaughlin. So the 3 best 3-man lineup combinations for the Wolves, just net points, are from 3 up to 1. Ant, Jordan McLaughlin, Jalen Noel. And think about that. That is 2 ferocious scoring wing players with a point guard that doesn't need to shoot, but just wants to get those guys opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. And then the next one is Anthony Edwards, Jordan McLaughlin, and then Taurean Prince, Taurean Prince is just off to a red-hot shooting start. That's part of the reason why he pops up on these. And then the number 1 3-man lineup combination for the Wolves is Jordan McLaughlin, Jalen Noel, and Taurean Prince. I think Prince is just a good glue guy, and when he's making shots, he's going to be valuable in almost any lineup. But I'm looking at this early data and saying, boy, when Anthony Edwards and Jordan McLaughlin play together, that's one of the best 2-man things you can put on the court if you're the Timberwolves. So do that more. It shouldn't just be like, oh, those guys link up for 3 minutes here, and then maybe those guys should just be on the court for 15, 20 minutes a night together. If you can make it happen.
That's intriguing though, because that gets into a very murky then, hey, why aren't the guys we're paying playing? But to your point, these stats back up the fact that they've not been good. I will say this, and you might be right. This might just start with the point guard. But when the starting 5 are out there together, and I saw this especially, I thought, in the first half of the game on Friday, there is clearly confusion about what roles should be.
Yes. They're not moving at full speed.
And Cat was marvelous in that game against the Lakers in the fourth quarter. But Phil, in the first half, he didn't know what he should do. Mm-hmm. Like, he's literally like looking around. I thought he was going to be comfortable shooting. He's not yet. So like, he's trying to he thinks that he should basically be, it looks to me like this, Gobert's personal point guard. Like, he is now, a lot of times, if he and Gobert are on the court together, Cat's first instinct is, where is Rudy? It's not, can I make a play here? Ant is confused at times about, well, should I shoot? Should I pass? I think Gobert's still trying to play his role, but he sort of gets caught up then in this entire confusion. So my biggest thing is, and this is on Finch, we have to define these roles. And if that includes D'Lo not playing as much, then that's the route.
Yeah. Here's one more. All right. This is, and again, it's 8 games, but 2-man lineup combinations for the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards and Jordan McLaughlin, when they're on the court together, it's one of the 3 best pairings of any pairing you can make on the team so far this season. They've played 70, so they have played 70 minutes together. So they're averaging like 10 minutes per game together. So that's good. It's actually more than I thought. So Anthony Edwards and Jordan McLaughlin are a plus 25 points per 100 possessions net. So that includes offense and defense. Plus right. 25, okay?
Yep.
When Ant and D'Lo are on the court together, and it's been 184 minutes of that, it's a minus 7 per 100 possessions. That's a 32-point swing per 100 possessions when you swap out J-Mac for D'Lo with Anthony Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, like, what more evidence do you need? And it's 8 games, but is that trend going to reverse itself in the next 8 games? Those guys should be playing together, man.
You tell me. It's your job to tell me that.
I am the CEO,
CEO
of Viking
of
Sweater
Wolf-
telling you that
and
D'Lo is
Wolf- and
fired.
Wolves.
D'Lo is fired.
Okay, you're fired.
So, by the way, our friends at Federated are helping us with these Timberwolves discussions, the guiding hand for our business, just like they have provided a guiding hand for over 100 years for other people's businesses at a very high level. They're all about risk management, tools and resources, and maximizing the success of your business. That's how they measure their success at Federated, is how successful is your business. You can find out who your marketing representative is at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. Also, we've got here a merchandise shop open for the last 48 hours. It's going to be a limited run. I'm not sure how long we're going to keep it open, but scorenorth.com/shop to get your Purple Daily themed hooded sweatshirts. Victory Monday, Just One Before I Die, hoodies and tees, some Score North hats and beanies and Purple Daily shirts and hoodies. So scorenorth.com/shop if you want to maybe get out in front of that Christmas shopping. You know, that loved one in your life that
I like it.
really loves Judd on Purple Daily. Really loves the sports dad. We should make a sports dad hoodie.
We should.
I like it.
Just like that Judd with 2 thumbs up.
I like it. Yep, sports dad approved.
With a little bit of a slouch. Just a little.
Oh God, yeah, no,
Just a
definite
little bit of a
slouch.
slouch. I'm
And
a sloucher,
shuffle,
too.
and shuffle.
And the shuffle.
I shuffle.
Yes.
I don't walk. I never pick up my damn feet. I don't know
Drives me
why.
crazy. I know.
Do you wind up shocking people in the winter when you touch,
Sometimes.
like shake hands because you're dragging your feet?
Sometimes
Or you shock yourself on a door handle?
I have a lot of, and this is not my fault, design flaws. I slouch, I shuffle. These are not things I decided to do. Design flaws.
This is the sports dad that God made himself.
Exactly right.
Evan.
Exactly
All right,
right.
it's a right